Salam Media, a global voice for humanity.
Joining us from the United States of America, Daniel Haqiqatjou, and born in Houston, Texas, comes from a liberal, secular Muslim background. He's written, lectured on contemporary issues surrounding Muslims and modernity over the past 10 years. He's spoken at universities, mosques around the world, and we are fortunate to have him in South Africa and more fortunate to have you in studio with us. Brother Daniel, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. How are you doing?
Alhamdulillah, very well. And you?
Doing very well. Thank you for having me.
Well, we trust you're enjoying your stay in South Africa.
Yes, absolutely. Everything is beautiful here.
Right. Now, obviously, I've looked at your CV and I've looked at your background, and obviously you've studied physics as an undergraduate at Harvard University, studies in philosophy, and this list actually gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And I think we'll spend a better time of 10 minutes just going through your CV. But in the interest of time, obviously, and we want to maximize the value we get out of you in a studio. Now, interesting, in terms of your writings and particularly surrounding Islam, modernity, and in the world that we actually live in, where Islam has come under the spotlight and being judged against systems around the world.
Exactly. So I founded an institute called Lesnar Institute, and it is dedicated to addressing these issues where modern ideologies, modern systems of thought are attacking Islam and claiming that Islam is actually less than rational and less than moral. And as Muslims, we believe that, and we know that Islam is from the creator of everything, of all human beings. And as such, it is morally and intellectually and rationally superior to man-made systems of belief and systems of thought. But as Muslims, do we truly recognize this? Do we truly taste this? This is a question now, because we live in a world where these ideologies are taken for granted, these modernist ideologies such as liberalism, secularism, feminism, LGBT agenda. These are the things that are taken for granted as common sense, and Muslims are put on the back foot. And you have now some Muslims who are so confused that they start questioning the Quran, they start questioning the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, may peace be upon him. They are in a state of confusion. So how do we get out of this confusion? So I started this institute, Lesnar Institute, based on my studies. I studied at Harvard University, studying these ideologies, and studied traditionally with scholars and ulama as well. And my project is to put the enemies of Islam on the back foot, those who are criticizing Islam on the back foot. You justify your ideologies, and we'll show how Islam is actually superior rationally and morally in a discursive way, conversation with people.
Exactly. And I think I'm quite glad that you used the word, on the back foot, because this is often we as Muslims are placed on the back foot in terms of how do we respond to these ideologies, how do we respond to the negativity, how do we respond to the challenges and the attacks, because Islam and the Islamic ideology does not conform to these modern ideologies that you speak of.
Exactly. We can talk about a specific example, such as intimate relations, sexual relations outside of marriage. And this is something where Muslims are criticized for the prohibition of zina, prohibition of sexual relations prior to or outside of marriage. And we are criticized as not valuing freedom of choice, not valuing individual autonomy. And so Muslims sometimes feel on the back foot. How do we justify the fact that Islam prohibits this behavior in very strong terms, and even there can be punishment if one is convicted in court? Islamic court can be convicted and punished for this type of behavior, as it says in the Quran. So how do Muslims justify this? Is very easy. We can ask, well, what is the harm and what are the damage to the individual person, the damage to families, the damage to society as a whole when these kinds of behaviors proliferate? And we can talk on many different levels of all of the harms that are caused. And even secular researchers and those who are not Muslim acknowledge that those children who are born to single parent households, single mother households, suffer from psychological issues at a higher rate, suffer from depression at a higher rate, are more likely to fall into crime than those who are not born from zina. They are more likely to do drugs. They're more likely to be unemployed. All of these factors coming from this one sexual practice. And then the spiritual, the psychological harm that comes from being in those types of relationships, where for women in particular, you are being with a man and you don't know if he's going to take care of you, or is he just using you? He is taking advantage of you. There is no commitment from him. This causes great psychological harm. Spiritual harm we can talk about as well, this kind of behavior. So all of this together makes a very strong argument that this behavior needs to be curbed, it needs to be stopped, and this is Islam's teaching on this. It appeals to the fitrah, the natural intellect and predisposition of human beings, Muslim and non-Muslim. And so we can very clearly justify in strong terms that, yes, what Islam teaches on this is the right path and shows the wisdom that this is coming from the creator of all human beings, as opposed to a man-made supposition, ideology that, we should allow people to do, quote-unquote, whatever they want, whatever they desire. No, following these desires leads to destruction for the individual and for the family and for society as a whole.
Exactly. And I think another issue is when we talk about morality and the whole question surrounding feminism, because that has been a major talking point in terms of feminism and how does Islam actually view feminism. And in many instances, we've seen Islam, we've seen the Quran, we've seen the Sunnah come under attack as far as women and women's rights are concerned. And sometimes these modern ideologies try to use sources from the Quran and Hadith to attack Islam and what Islam stands for as far as feminism is concerned. And we can also extend it to other issues, like, for instance, we're talking about gay, the lesbian community as well. And this is where the attack is coming, and this is where the defense, and obviously we need to be guarded against it, but also in terms of we should not be on the back foot to defend what Islam actually stands for as far as these matters are concerned.
Exactly. We shouldn't be on the back foot when it's very clear that what Islam is teaching is far better for human beings on all of these levels. And you mentioned feminism. On the issue of feminism, you have this idea that because Islam treats men and women differently in certain respects, not all respects, in certain respects, such as style of dress, certain kinds of rights and obligations and duties between men and women, depending on if it's husband and wife, for example, or son and daughter. These kinds of differences are a source of critique by the modern world that says that men and women should be treated equally, exactly the same. They should have the same kinds of rights and responsibilities, the same style of dress. Everything should be the same. Otherwise, this is misogyny. This is subjugation of women. So how do we address this? It's very simple. Again, we go back to something that is so obvious to everyone, that men and women are different. Men and women have different anatomy, different physiology, different psychology. Even the structure of the brain physically is different between men and women. The research has shown, for example, that the percentage of gray matter within the brain is different between the sexes. These are significant things. So if you have two completely different species, even you could say, two different organisms, the male and the female genders, shouldn't there be a difference in accommodation, a difference in how they are treated, and a difference in the system of life, the way of life between the genders, depending on their natural makeup and bodies and psychologies and mentalities? Of course, this is something that's common sense, and it would be completely irrational to say that, okay, you are different, but we're going to make sure to fit you into these same boxes because of this man-made idea of every gender is equal.
Yes. Now also, because time is of the essence and we've got limited time, I just want to focus a bit on the one issue that you mentioned, and this is where the danger lies, is where we get so caught up in these modern ideologies and we start questioning our own faith, and we start questioning what Islam, obviously the Islamic viewpoint on these modern ideologies. And this seems to be the nature, and together with things like technology and the like, and with information right across, we talk about the internet and the digital age as well. So much information is available, and it is so easily to be drawn astray and start questioning your own ideology.
Exactly. I think that there has been a huge increase in doubts about faith in the age, especially of social media. This is something that is found within many different faith communities, and Muslims haven't been immune, where because of social media, people can see what others are sharing, their friends, their family, their community. And this creates a perfect storm for doubts to spread. A seed can be planted very easily, and not only as opposed in the past, you might read a book. For example, a young person might go to a library and come across a book by an atheist and then start doubting, and that would be a problem. But now that same person, that same youth can have that problem, that doubt, and post about it. And then suddenly everyone is seeing that, his friends, his family. And so that seed is able to grow, that poison is able to spread. Of course, good can also spread in that way through social media, but unfortunately, these platforms can lead to the increase of doubt in a community. So the statistics show that there is an increase in atheism. There's an increase in those who believe that there is a God. They're not atheists per se. They believe that there's a creator, but they don't believe in a particular religion. They don't believe in organized religion. So we see an increase of this, and I think social media in particular has had this catalyzing effect.
And just finally, in terms of advice and some of the issues that we need to look out for, some of the things that we need to guard against.
Well, there are many things that can be said, but for the sake of time, I think it's very important for Muslims to have confidence, to Muslims to have this strong faith and belief that, yes, we are, as Muslims, we have this spiritual confidence that we are slaves to Allah, we are worshippers of Allah, but we also have to have intellectual confidence. We have to have this sense of moral confidence in the truth of Islam, that Allah has sent guidance for all mankind, and we should not shy away from expressing that in the best way, with hikmah, with goodly counsel, as Allah advises us in the Quran. And this is something that when I said I founded Lesnar Institute, it's online, lesnar.org, but the meaning of Lesnar is actually a verb in Arabic, and it's coming from the statement of Umar radiallahu anhu, who said, Lesnar ala al-haq, are we not on the truth? And this is something that he is saying to inspire confidence for Muslims to go out and to worship openly in Mecca at the time when there was so much persecution and so much pressure on Muslims to stay hidden and keep their beliefs hidden. And Umar responded, Alasna ala al-haq, are we not on the truth? So shouldn't we be confident? Shouldn't we stand strong in face of all of this conflict and pressure? And so he exemplified, along with all of the Sahaba, all of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, this kind of bravery in the face of challenge. We need to revive this in our time.
Well, inshallah, but I must say, Sheikh Daniel, Jazakallah so much for that and for taking time out and honoring us with your presence in the studios this morning, and we do appreciate it. I was just hoping that we would have had a lot more time, obviously, to talk, because I suppose there's a lot more you can share with us, inshallah. But Jazakallah for now. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.